Most of these pictures are actually mine. The presentation is kind of like, actually, it's like my story, my personal story is kind of how I put this together. Um, I don't know if you can see my mouse here on the
Yeah,
screen.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll
well,
just go through the camp real quick if I can, if it stays there. We had five tents here, large tents. One was a radio tent, one was a community tent, and then the other three were sleeping tents. And then we had three private tents for some of the other team members, the private tourists, and the support team members. Antennas that you can see here, and here are 12, 17-meter dual bander. Um, right here is the 160-meter vertical.
Wow. Wow.
Um, this is a 40-meter vertical here. This one here, a little cockeyed, is another 40-meter vertical. This is 30 meters here. It was originally a vertical. We made and switched to an inverted V later. This antenna here, you can't really see it well. That's a 20-meter monobander. This is the 10-meter monobander here. This foreground Yagi is the 15-meter monobander. And then this is the 80-meter vertical here. And then eventually for receive, the guys put up a bog for receive on one, primarily used on 160. That ended up working pretty well. So these are the team members that actually went. So as you guys may recall, we originally had a few more people. We lost several people due to the 3-week delay in leaving. Um, so it was still an international team. Just a couple notes. Max, N4ML, was our youngest team member. Max works for the ARRL in the education services area.
Oh.
And our other youth operator was Alex, DL2ALY. And Alex had just spent a year at Neumayer Station in Antarctica. So obviously he's a DL, and so he was on the German Antarctic Research Station. And Vadim came from Ukraine. He did quite a bit of the 160-meter operating. And and here's just the rest of the team. In general, everybody got along great. There were no issues, no medical emergencies, none of that. So um, it's really
All right.
tough when you put a group of guys together, um, for the first time like that, especially under such conditions. Let's see here. So we had five support team with us. Sean was the team doctor. He's an ER doc in Guam. And his brother Neil came. Neil works for the National Park Service. Neil's work on the island was invaluable. That guy could do anything. He could pitch in. He wasn't afraid to do any kind of job we needed help with. Just incredibly helpful, super nice guy. Yulia was the other doctor. She's a surgeon. She actually just spent a year on Neumayer Station as well. So she and Alex knew each other before the expedition. And you can see she's got a call sign. She made her very first QSOs from Bouvet.
Hmm.
And then our search and rescue team, Peter. This is Peter's second time on Bouvet. He was there in 2023 as well. And Bergier joined us, and Bergier's from Iceland. And I had the pleasant experience of meeting both these guys a couple times before the expedition. And in fact, I spent a weekend in Iceland learning how to walk, climb, and navigate on a glacier. That Peter and Bergier were my trainers. So the 19 of us got on the boat. As far as that, we also had two private tourists and one of them was the one putting all the videos out on X during the expedition. We left Cape Town on the 21st of February around 3 in the morning. We took about 6 days to get there, and 2 days around the island. We had about a day before we finally went on getting there, and then we spent like a day. It took 2 days to get off the island. So we were literally on shore for 2 weeks. Ken was on the island for 15 days. So the total duration was 4 weeks, was 28 days. So most of you guys already know that Bouvet is a long freaking ways away. It's about 1,500 miles southwest of Cape Town. It's at 54 degrees south latitude. I spent a lot of my time before the expedition doing logistics in Cape Town. Ken had me in charge of all the Cape Town logistics for the team. So I arrived on February 12th. And so in Cape Town Airport, if you haven't been there before, there's this big sign that's painted on the wall there, Cape Town, your gateway to Antarctica. All the expeditions to Antarctica, international expeditions in that part of the world, that part of the Antarctic world, all go through Cape Town, whether it's by boat or by air. So that's why they're the gateway to Antarctica. So we kind of came at like the tail end of the peak season of them getting all the expeditions to Antarctica. And so we were fortunate that we weren't quite in the peak. We were able to get more attention from the ship's agent. And like in December, when I was working with them, and even early January, they were just swamped. So it was really hard to get any movement at times because they were dealing with so many issues with so many expeditions in real time. So that was a Friday. Paul ZS1S was invaluable. On the ground in Cape Town. I worked with Paul for practically a year before the expedition. I mean, without him, we'd have been screwed. He just did everything for us that needed to be done on the ground there. So he took me around for a little sightseeing. This is on the waterfront here, and these statues are the four Nobel Peace Prize winners from South Africa. In the background is Table Mountain, which is quite a famous mountain. You'll see it here. They have these frames set up all around town. This is called Signal Hill where I'm at, and I'm not sure why there isn't like it's full of towers or anything, but it's provides some nice vistas from there. And then this is around the bay. We went to there were a lot of kiteboarders on this beach, really pretty windy, and of course the typical tourist sign in the touristy waterfront, the V&A waterfront. So on Sunday, so this would have been 12th through 14th of February, Paul took 8 of us from the expedition to Cape Agulhas, which is the southernmost point in Africa where the Indian and the Atlantic Oceans meet. So you can see a couple of the team members here actually. And there's also a lighthouse at Cape Agulhas. And then about 20 minutes away, we met a group of hams for lunch. And this is where we stopped for lunch. And this is Paul ZS1S next to me. And we took this picture. The seas were really rough. It was pretty windy that day. This location where we're at actually has a school of stingrays that people can walk up and they feed them all the time when the weather's and the seas are calm. So a couple days later, we were able to get on the boat. So we had to prepare for the departure. A net had to be placed on the helipad to provide friction for the helicopter. And the helicopter was flown in by the pilots and the engineer that came with them. So picture myself in front of the helicopter after had landed on the boat. We also had to start securing some of our supplies. These barrels here, the black barrels are Jet 1A fuel. So there's 15 barrels, about 3,000 liters. And then we had 7,000 liters on an internal tank in the vessel. And the blue drums are gasoline for the generators. And we had 3,200 liters. So there's 16 drums there. And then this is indicative of our sealed drums where we had all our gear in, of how we had to secure it all on the ship. So there's just a little area here, but there's even more drums behind the fuel drums like this. And then underneath this Zodiac, you can't really see it, are a bunch of spider poles and masts. They fit quite nicely under there. It was easy to secure them. And then here, this box, that contained the rotor blades for the helicopter. So the helicopter blades had to be removed before we left port, and then they were stored in this box. And then when we arrived at Bouvet, then the team had to put the blades back on so that we could commence helicopter operations. It was kind of an interesting thing when we got there. The container was loaded on the bow of the vessel, and all these pictures are taken in the stern. And we originally thought, well, we could probably run sling operations from the front. And as soon as the pilots got there before they landed the helicopter, they're like, nope, we're not going to do that. You got to sling from the back. That's all we're going to do. And it was because there was too many obstructions in the front due to the crane and some of the other features in the boat. And so we had to unpack the container and move everything from the front of the boat to the back of the boat. So we used the boat's derricks to take the gear, drop it down on shore, and then we manually moved it down to the rear and then used the rear derrick to bring everything back up, and then we placed it and secured it. So this is when we were getting ready to leave Cape Town. This was Friday afternoon before we left on the Saturday at 3 in the morning. Paul ZS1S took this picture. ZS1FF owns a sailboat, and so he took a sailboat out and took pictures of us leaving, and actually when we arrived. This was my room. This is pretty typical for the bunks. If this space here looks narrow, it is. There's not a lot of spare room. I had a single. Many of the rooms were just like this, but were doubles. And then, yeah, you never really slept still either because of the waves. And then this is just a picture of the bridge of the vessel, where all the equipment was and where it swayed the most. So as I mentioned, we spent 6 days at sea, and so some interesting things, several icebergs. This iceberg here, I took with full zoom on my iPhone, and it was 12 miles away. It was the biggest iceberg we saw. The boat would flip on their radar on occasion to get a bearing on the icebergs so they knew where they were so they could be avoided. This is a picture of an albatross. So the whole time we had some albatrosses and skuas constantly circling the boat. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, days from land, and these birds are still circling us. It was kind of an incredible thing to experience. And then this is me putting on a survival suit. So there were survival suits on board the vessel if we had to ditch. So we had to make sure we knew how to put on the survival suits in case there was an emergency and we had to leave the vessel. So these are the embedded videos. So this first one was a very calm day. It was calm for a couple hours, and we never had seas this calm ever again. And the second video is more indicative of what we put up. So you should hear volume from these, and hopefully everybody's got a good enough internet connection so the video is not too choppy. And you'll notice at the back, the helicopter blades are removed on the heli and it's secured. So we finally got to Bouvet on the 27th. The island was pretty well fogged in when we got there. I've got a lot of pictures of just a rough skyline such as this. And so this is another embedded video to kind of give you an idea of, our arrival. So we couldn't do anything that day because of the weather. The island was fogged in completely. So the next day we actually had a weather window. So the first people on the island were Peter, our guide, Ken, LA7GIA, and myself. And we were really stuffed. It was like a tuna can in the back of that helicopter. We had taken with us at least a week's worth of supplies in case we were to be stranded on the island. We had emergency tents, wool blankets, food. We had kerosene burner to heat water. We had water. It was tight. I was really cramped in on the helicopter. It was really fortunately it wasn't a long flight, but it was long enough for me. And then this is an embedded video after we got like one of the first cargo flights, kind of give you an idea of what it looked like before we started setting up camp. And where it'll start is like from the back of camp, and then that's the glacier. So right now in this direction, we're looking pretty much towards Western Europe here, and it'll sweep across to Eastern Europe, then the JA, VKZL. Kind of give you the view we had. So a lot of people probably remember we talked about having two camps and a North America focus camp. And it ended up we had one camp and we set up in the location that was going to be the North American focus camp, which just was an amazing location. It was relatively flat, as you saw from the opening slide and from this video. We could not use the old 2023 3y0J location. The glacier had receded quite significantly and it was fully populated with seals. And the same thing goes for the beach. As you remember, the 3y0J team landed on the beach. It was rough. There's pretty hefty surf there, and that was no longer possible because of the seals. There were hundreds of seals on the beach. And it was our emergency evacuation plan and our backup plan if we couldn't do heli operations or, the helicopter broke and couldn't be repaired. And this very first flight, we flew over the beach. In fact, I had the best view of the beach and I looked down and saw seals. I'm like, well, there goes that. So the camp evolved. So this is why I call it camp evolution. It probably took a good 5 days or more to get the camp really set up. So it just kind of grew. Originally, I mean, we originally started out, we got there, as I mentioned on Saturday. It turned out we had three cargo flights and another passenger flight. So there were seven of us. We put up two tents. We had our first meal in the sleeping tent with the kerosene stove and because we didn't have time to screw around with generators or to get cables out, etc. And the next day, the weather sucked. It was incredibly windy. We probably had sustained winds of 30 miles an hour or more. The rain was horizontal, and we're in the social tent, and we had a generator running by then. We had one or two generators with us, and water's coming in through the canvas. It's leaking off the frame's shaking like hell. And I'm sitting there wondering, what the hell am I doing here? And James W7EY and Alex DL2ALY uh, found our emergency dipoles, and they ended up they put one up between the ridges, like these ridges here. It's kind of hard to see. It's really difficult. And so the feed point was about 6.5 feet above ground, and Alex got on FT8 and got the expedition started. And then as the bands changed, we'd have to go down, they'd pull the antenna down, they'd modify it, get it back up. And then finally we ended up with a 40-meter dipole, and then Caesar sat down and then operated 40 CW all night. So we went that's where we kind of started. So it was even before these spider poles were put up. I'd say the antenna was probably across here because this was the social tent. So yeah, I guess across here. And then we went to here. We still, like in this picture, the 10-meter Yagi isn't up. The mast is, but not the Yagi. And finally, this is the final camp. But again, it took at least 5 days to get all this done because it was always windy, it was always wet or snowing or both. It was really hard. We took several people to put up antennas. And then, we were trying to get enough antennas up so we could start operations, so we could get people operating and people doing antennas. We ran 6-hour shifts on the radio, so we'd have 6 on and 12 off. So our off time was usually to sleep, eat, and repair antennas or put up antennas or do maintenance in the camp. This is a view from the 3y0J location. It's really hard to see, but our camp is right up here. So this is probably about a half a mile or so away that you had to walk to get there. So again, you can kind of see from the camp that we had a clear takeoff to every direction we needed around the world. So we were really in good shape. We had good takeoffs everywhere. I call this my tourist day because everybody on the expedition had the opportunity to take a helicopter flight around the island. So the first Monday we were there, we had a pretty long weather window, and we managed to get the rest of the team, the rest of our supplies on the island. We put up the remaining tents we needed, and then finally we had time. We had just enough time for 3 of us to go on a helicopter trip. So I went with the 2 private tourists and went with them. So I think I've got a couple videos here on the next slide. This is me with the lead pilot. We landed on the glacier. And you can kind of see, pardon me, kind of indicative of what the Bouvet shoreline looks like. So it's really impossible to land other than that beach, which now is no longer possible because of the seal population. So these are a couple videos I took. I was in the middle seat between the tourists so I could give them the best view out the windows. So the radio tent, as I mentioned, we had a dedicated radio tent. We had 5 stations in the radio tent. We had IC 7610s and ACOM amplifiers. We also had 2 Flex Auroras in the social tent that were dedicated to FT8. We ran CW, sideband, and FT8 in the radio tent. This picture here, it's empty. This is the day when the rest of the team had their tourist day. So because I had already went, I was operating 5 stations on FT8 simultaneously. So I was constantly running between the radios, keeping the queue filled and making contacts. And then I've got a short video that Max N4ML took while I was operating CW, just so you can kind of get an idea of what the noise was in the tent from the wind. So that day that everybody did their tourist day, the weather was really tolerable, and a bunch of us took a bath. So one of the tourists went on a previous nice day, found a small pond, and he went swimming. Of course, he's Norwegian, so he loves cold water. And so this Saturday was super nice. It felt like a heat wave. The sun was out, there wasn't much wind, and with the volcanic rock, reflecting all the heat, it was like amazing. And so we went to this pond that he found, and it was frozen over. So we kept hiking around, and we found this teeny tiny little pond, and we ended up jumping in. I wasn't in too long, and it was freaking cold because it was basically around freezing. But it was nice to kind of get the grime off real quick. I'd had the same clothes on for a week. We didn't have showers on the island. This was the only way to clean yourself. So, I was able to change my clothes, put on a fresh set of clothes for the next week and kind of clean up, and felt afterwards I felt really refreshed, but I was freezing my butt off in the pond. And and then the morning time typically it was the only time it was calm. So these are two different days I took pictures of the sunrise on Bouvet. And I'm an MSU grad, so go green. And so naturally, I had to get a picture with the Michigan State flag. So that's the glacier and the 1217 antenna in the background. On the island, there were basically three types of critters. There were these skua birds. They were very territorial. We watched several bird fights. We did see some albatross, but they were only out on the water. We never saw an albatross on land. This is a fur seal. I took this down by the old 3y0k camp. I had to zoom in. I wasn't that close to him. They were constantly growling at us when we were down there, and they can be quite aggressive. And then this is a chinstrap penguin. There's a colony of chinstrap penguins there. There are a few emperors in the colony as well, which I don't understand why. But this little guy was by himself and trying to climb up to the helicopter landing zone that we had set up, and he couldn't. It was too steep for him. So I snapped a picture of him when I was up there waiting for the helicopter. This is a beautiful day on Bouvet. So this is the following Tuesday of the second week. This is the last day we had helicopter operations, and this is fog just piling over from the glacier. So that type of weather wasn't unusual. It was my best piece of gear was actually my rain suit. Staying dry on Bouvet was an incredible challenge. We all had waterproof gloves that were no longer waterproof. And it was just really hard to stay dry. I mean, we had snow. I was out one day, we were working, I think, on the 80-meter antenna, and it was cold and snowing and blowing snow. So I put on my down jacket and my snow pants, and about an hour or two later, it was raining. My gear got soaked, and it took 2 or 3 days to dry out in the tent. And I couldn't change because we were in the middle of working on an antenna. We would have lost the antenna had we decided just to stop and change our clothes. So that was a pretty miserable day. So this is like the very last helicopter flight before we actually left the island. And again, this is on Tuesday. And the heli made 2 trips that day. They were bringing back some supplies, and we conned the boat into making pizza for us. So they brought back pizza, some water, and some empty fuel cans because a couple people didn't tie down fuel cans and they blew away at night. And so this is kind of a long video. I'm in this orange suit here. The Norwegian tourist is here. This is Ken, LA7GIA. I think this is Neil here, if I recall. But so this is a 1 to 2 minute video. So at the beginning, you probably saw the pilot like waving us in. They were in a rush to get out because technically they shouldn't have been flying in this weather. The boat you couldn't see from the island. So they kind of knew the position and they took off and they found the boat, obviously. But it was a pretty risky flight for them. And like I said, we didn't see them again until Saturday. The weather between this day and that Saturday was the worst weather we had. That's where we experienced the sustained 55 to 60 mile an hour winds. We were getting really nervous that we wouldn't have a weather window to get off the island. And we chose to leave the Saturday and Sunday because there was another huge storm like right behind that on Sunday. I'll get into in a minute. So we got everybody off the island. So this is kind of the official team photo. This is the pilots and the engineer. You'll see that it's pretty windy. So we had a hell of a time keeping the flags together. It was really cold. And we, on Saturday, we had 11 flights off the island. We had 4 passenger flights and 7 cargo flights. And then on Sunday, we had 7 flights. So we had 2 passenger flights and 5 cargo flights. And we had to secure everything on the boat. Saturday, I was the first person off with the private tourists, and then Ken left me in charge on the boat to get sure that everything was secured, everybody got back safe, all the equipment was okay, and we just get it off the helideck and secure it. And at this point we did the same thing on Sunday. But at this point, the captain of the vessel was telling us to hurry up because there was a big storm coming. And if we didn't get out soon, we would have had to spend the next 2 to 3 days around Bouvet riding out the storm. And believe me, it was a really rough ride leaving Bouvet. It was at least 3 to 4 days of rough seas. So we're back at sea. We finally started to calm down. So this is a sunset I grabbed. And of course, we saw icebergs on the way back. And then we came back on the 21st of March. I got up early to watch the sunrise over Cape Town. So you can see Table Mountain, the sun coming up over the Cape of Good Hope, and then Table Mountain in the background. One of the guys took a picture of me. We're all pretty happy to get ready to get back to land. And then Paul ZS1S took this picture from ZS1FF's boat. I think this is just a really cool picture. There's Table Mountain here in the background. This is Signal Hill here, like right behind the boat. And then this hill here is called Lion's Head. So on that Saturday, we got the boat in the harbor. A couple people had to leave. We ended up getting the container completely packed and ready for shipment on Saturday. So we walked away from the vessel right around 5 p.m. and got back to the hotel. Everybody got cleaned up. And then we went out to eat, had a few beers, and celebrated. There were celebrations on the boat. If anybody saw the presentation at Dayton, we had some pictures of that. So there were a few people that, yeah, they could put down some booze, so it was fun. But the ZS1CT is the club in Cape Town. They were incredibly helpful. They arranged a reception for us at the Cape Town Yacht Club. So we had several of the local hams. We had the ship's agent, which is a freight company that worked with us there as well, based out of Cape Town. And then here and here, I'm handing out patches I had made. Paul, actually, we sent him the image. The pilot and I came up using ChatGPT with an image, and Paul had the patches made locally, and they were ready as soon as we got back. So this was Paul, Alan, and Robert. Alan ZS1AL and Robert ZS1FF, who were very instrumental in helping us, particularly Paul. And then the helicopter crew. This is Mike, and I can never remember his call. I ended up carrying back amplifier section of a KPA 500 for him to send to Elecraft for repair. And Goodme's taking a picture of him there. And just some of the other people and the yacht club. And then the team with the ACOM banner. So after that, everybody started kind of leaving as they could. Some people were able to get early flights out. Some people couldn't. For me, it was practically impossible to leave earlier. It was several $1,000s to get an earlier flight out for just a couple days. I couldn't justify the expense. So I stayed in Cape Town a week after we got back. So the first day back with the Norwegian tourists, we hiked up Lion's Head, and he took a picture of me here overlooking Cape Town. And then we hiked up Table Mountain. And this is off the backside of Table Mountain. And then the next day, my legs were trashed. So there was a 50-meter saltwater pool that was still open because it was already fall there by the time we got back. And so I went swimming. Also spent some time then the next day at the aquarium nearby, the botanical gardens, and then a couple of us got together and went to a hole-in-a-wall restaurant downtown, which to try to get a taste of something local. Um, I spent a day touring Robben Island, and Robben Island is where all the political prisoners were housed during apartheid. This cell here was actually Nelson Mandela's cell, the actual cell that he had to live in when he was a political prisoner. And then there's a African penguin colony on Robben Island, and then a view of Cape Town from Robben Island. And so wrapping up, our main corporate partners were Ice Tugs, is who we contracted for the vessel. Ultimate Aviation was the helicopter company, and Myhausen International was the freight company and ship's agent. So each one of these corporate partners were key to the success of the DXpedition and in one way or another. These are our DXpedition sponsors. They provided equipment. DX Engineering in particular provided a ton of equipment, coax, just all kinds of things, filters, ICOM the radios, ACOM the amps, Rig Expert antenna analyzers, WeMo, we had some monobanders, 403A had filters and headphones, Unified Micro, some parts for the Bog, Flex, the Auroras, and so on and so forth. What we call our corporate sponsors were Bernie, EA1CS, SQ1K, Bert, he did custom gear that people could order. Arctic Lavo is the tent company, the large tents and the domes, and Spider Beam. We used a lot of spider poles on the island. So Spider Beam gave us some very generous discounts when we purchased the poles. Our major contributors and special thanks to NCDXF, Indexa, and GDXF. And then just a general thank you, global organizations, global clubs, and I want to recognize the Bay Area DXers for their donation, and then individual donations from several people on the call here tonight. Our family and friends, I was gone 6.5 weeks, so my family had to put up with a lot, both before, it was a job, it was a full-time job getting ready the last 2 months, and then being gone. Our pilots, radio pilots, and of course, everyone who worked us. So Peter 1, what I can share is the container's en route to Texas. It's actually in Texas now. Last I knew, it was in the port of Houston. I don't know, that information's still old, so it should be getting prepped for delivery. The team's still planning to go in February. Here's the website, and donations are being accepted for Peter 1. And that's it. So I'll stop sharing. And I'd be more than happy to take questions. I normally like to take questions during the presentation, but it's really hard on Zoom. So I hope that was okay. So I don't know, Dave, do you want to try to moderate, or do you guys just want to?
I think we're well behaved enough that we can probably just wing it here.
Yeah, whatever you guys want to do is fine with me. Let me change my
I've got a quick question
display.
for you.
Yeah,
Get it rolling. So when you were showing the verticals on the island,
yeah.
what was the plan and action for the radials?
So the radials, we brought radials with us, particularly for the 160. There were a significant number of radials. We had quarter wave radials. There was usually a junction box at the feed point, and we just laid out radials as best we could in an omnidirectional array.
How many, roughly? I mean,
I think for like 40, we had at least 30 radials or more.
wow,
I mean, for 160, there were even more than that.
wow,
Yeah.
Wow. Yep.
amazing.
Yeah, Ernie? You're muted.
Oh, yeah. Listening.
Ernie, you're muted.
I just two things that were amazing. The 10-meter CW operator that I worked was probably knocking them off one contact every 3 seconds. It was an amazing operator. I don't know who it was, but whoa, he was terrific.
Might have been Adrian.
The 20-meter CW operator was working through some of the worst deliberate QRM I've ever heard, but by God, he stuck with me until we got the call.
Oh, that's great.
You guys were great.
Thank you very much. So what we did is, as I mentioned, we had the 6-hour shifts, and we would kind of pick bands and modes as we came on shift. So we'd refuel the generators, and then we'd come on shift and figure out, how the bands were and who wanted to do what, and off we went.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, good. Yeah, I missed the first part, of course, due to the storm and the rain and that. And I just wanted to mention the first person to operate from there was the infamous Gus Browning, who used to go on expeditions back in the 60s and 70s. And he used to do it on a shoestring and that. So he and 4 guys were in South Africa. 3 of the guys took off and he decided to go to Bouvet. And in theory, he was there, but you may be able to pick some of this apart. His comments about the expedition and what was in the future was, it seems absolutely impossible for anyone to go there unless they come across another icebreaker to get them there. To charter one of these monsters is out of the question with the normal contributions you receive from the fellows back home. You could probably charter one of these boats, but considering the cost of chartering a much smaller boat, I would think it would be something like $10,000 a day. The price continues while you're on the island. So by doing a little figuring, let's say it takes 2 days to get from Cape Town to there, plus 5 days on the island, and then 2 days more to get back, you'll have tied up the ship for 7 days. $70,000. We all know that a Hamdi expedition can't afford to spend this kind of money just to put on one DX spot on the air. Let's see, 2 days, 1,500 miles is 30 miles an hour and 30-foot waves.
No, impossible. No.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I mean, we did have, we had 30-foot waves. We had 10-meter swells. I mean, at one point, when we got close to the island, the boat had to slow down to 5 knots and had to start zigzagging because the helicopter pilots were worried about the mechanical stress on the helicopter. The seas were that rough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So is there anything, we were looking at the pictures of Cape Town. It looks like there's nothing there but rock and some houses and buildings. Is that what Cape Town is?
No, I mean, Cape Town, I mean, there's a big downtown. There's some large buildings there. It's got a good sized port. It has a big tourist area. There's some beaches around, like behind Table Mountain. There's some beaches. I mean, it's a pretty big town. Like around the bay where I showed you, that's really flat there. The beach is very long. When the wind comes up, there's a lot of kite boarders there. So it's a decent town. There's things to do. I mean, after a week, you kind of see everything. Like I said, I was there the second week. I was able to do things. The first week I couldn't. I was working. So a week was enough. And it was nice to have Paul take us around and show us things as well. So it's not just a rock. I mean, and you can take a cable car up to Table Mountain. I mean, the geology is quite interesting there. Actually, I never would have expected that, in all honesty.
Huh. And I missed you had a couple of touristas on board, Dennis?
Yeah, well, we had 2 private tourists that actually that's where quite a bit of money came from for the DXpedition. So they could go to Bouvet. Then we had, 5 support people as well as 14 hams.
Yeah. So
what was
the 2
final
tourists?
cost? Yeah.
They do that they want to visit all countries or
they just want to go places where people don't normally go.
yeah, wow.
They found
Huh.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you have to leave anything on the island, or did you have
No,
to take everything off?
we had to take everything off, and we did.
What was
Everything had to come off.
what was the final cost for everything?
I think we were around budget. It was around 1.7 million.
Wow.
You know, we did a financial contribution, but by God, there's no way in hell you could get me to go there.
Greg, you had a question?
I was wondering about seasickness.
We had a couple of guys that were sick as hell. I mean, as soon as we got on the boat, they were in their bunk most of the time. I mean, they really suffered, and they were sick there and going back. It was very difficult for some of the guys.
It's tough.
It was
That's a
tough.
treat.
Yeah, it was a rough ride most of the time too.
Wow.
I mean, it would beat the hell out of you, just going down the hallway because you're just getting pushed back and forth along the sides as the boat moves around.
So for
How
you
was the
guys,
food on the boat?
It was okay. It was nothing special, but it was okay. I mean, I've had better, I've had worse. I mean, the cooks tried,
Were the
but it was,
pizzas really a welcomed event? I mean, something different?
yeah, because we were on like dehydrated food otherwise. I mean,
Oh,
we had these like MRE type things that we just added hot water to. So, to get some
yeah.
real food was a welcome change.
Well, yeah. Even spam would have been welcome, I bet.
Well, that's kind of
No, we're
pushing the
not going
limit,
to go
Greg.
that far. Yeah.
Be careful.
Dennis,
Yeah.
as an operator,
Oh,
what
wow.
were some of the high and low points for you as an operator?
It was kind of fun to work people I knew, both, on both CW and FT8. So that was always nice. I mean, the low points was just cutting through the bullshit. We had a lot of problems with working through the Europeans into North America. Certain people that live in a country shaped like a boot were probably the worst offenders. Some of
So
the
they would just keep
Europeans,
calling you.
pardon me?
They would just keep calling you and
Yeah, they were just a pain in the ass. Yeah. Um, but I mean, as the week went on, I mean, the antennas were taking a beating in the wind. So, having problems with antennas in the middle of a pileup wasn't exactly a good time. I mean, my last day of operating was on Friday. The 10-meter antenna, the feed point was loose, so I was, basically got relegated to FT8 to be able to try to work people. And I had the computer ended up resetting on me. I had to replace the computer. Then the radio started resetting on me. I had to replace the radio. I blew probably, 20 minutes just dicking around with equipment, but it was the last day, so it wasn't that
Yeah.
bad. But I mean,
Wow.
the equipment took a beating, but I have to say that, I mean, a lot of our like antenna problems were probably self-induced. It was really hard to get things tight in the cold with your
Yeah.
hands, because you had to take your gloves off to work on it. And, we lost a 20-meter antenna because the mast came down because somebody didn't tie a good enough knot, for example. So we lost a guy. So things like that. But
Yeah.
I would say those are kind of my high and low points, as far as operating. I mean, the pileups were always big. And it was challenging to manage the pileup. I mean, some of the guys, especially on phone, had a difficult time because the pileups got just so huge on phone in particular with the Europeans. But I
how
think
far would you spread out?
well, at one point, one of the guys
those-
was using practically the entire 12-meter band on phone. I tried to keep my pileup no more than 5 kilohertz or so wide. I felt that just anything beyond that's just excessive. But it was hard. People were still calling whenever, and I'm sure there were people calling that I couldn't hear that were, further out, beyond the main pile.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a slide or the QSO statistics? I'm wondering about those.
Go out to M0OXO's website, and like type in a call in the log, and then you can get the stats that way.
Okay.
I purposely did this slideshow to not be like statistical driven or anything like that. I think like 17% of the queues were with North America, like 50% were Europe. I think like 50 some percent were FT8, then CW, then SSB in terms of mode. There are a few RTTY QSOs, but not enough to be statistically significant. And then I don't know if Charles' website does a band breakdown or not. I mean, I'd say 12 meters was the money band in the daytime for sure.
Wow.
I was
Wow.
really suitably impressed. I didn't think 12 would be the money band. I figured 15 would be.
Hmm.
Sure.
Did you
Um,
try any 6 meter?
no, no, we didn't plan on doing 6 meter. The only thing we did that was exotic was QO100. The guy set up, brought a QO100 station, and the dish was actually inside the social tent. So that way it wouldn't blow around outside.
Interesting.
Did you use Starlink at all?
Yeah, entirely, the whole time. Yeah, it worked very well.
I was wondering how you drove any anchors in the ground for your guy lines.
So we either used large boulders or we would drill with SDS bits into the granite and then have a rebar that would go in there with a loop welded on it. And then we'd use that
Wow.
to
Yeah.
act as a stabilizer. And that's how the masts were secured to the ground was with two of those and at the bottom plate.
Hey, did you get a chance to see the weather station on the island, Dennis?
Yeah, we flew by it. One leg is already over the edge, so it's only a matter of
Okay.
time before it falls into the ocean. And so Ken
Yeah.
alerted the Polar Institute about that.
Is that
Wow.
active? Is that weather station still active?
I want to say I think it is, but we didn't really like, I'll say interact with it. I mean, we spent time like on the internet looking at, multiple weather models to try to figure out what the weather would do.
Yeah.
Usually anything beyond 24 hours was inaccurate, and even within 24 hours wasn't necessarily accurate. It was really tough
Oh,
to really, figure out what the weather was going to do. It was really, it was pretty much unpredictable.
How far offshore did the
wow.
boat stay? Ship, boat?
Maybe a kilometer or two at the most. They were very close to shore. The big thing was is they were like around the corner of the island on the lee side, so they could be out of the wind. Um,
Yeah.
So like when we got there, the sat radio we had wasn't registered for the island itself. So we didn't have any comms with the boat until the helicopter came back the next time with cargo. And I had a VHF airband radio, and then I could tell them, what the problem was. And then that's how we communicated was with the VHF radio when they were line of sight
Yeah.
or through the helicopter pilots. But then once we
Wow.
had Starlink up, we were in good shape.
Wow.
What is the depth
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
of the water off the island? What's the
You know,
depth of the water off the island?
I don't know offhand. I mean, I saw the charts, but I don't recall. I'd hate to tell you what it is and be not tell you the truth. I mean, it's a volcanic shelf, so the captain had the charts, so he knew how far to stay away.
It looked like
But
it went
Uh,
straight down. There's no beach. It just was boom.
yeah, except, I didn't show you a picture of the beach, but there is a beach, and the guys landed on it in 23, but it's now all seal habitat.
How,
We're looking forward to Peter.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. We're looking forward to your Peter Island when you go there.
Well, yeah, things are in motion. Kevin, you had a question?
Yeah, when you were using Starlink, were you using Starlink's timing for your digital stations? Or did you have a
No, GPS. We had a
okay,
GPS puck.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
are you doing Peter one yourself? And did you not get I mean, are you sick of it after you got back? And is Peter one something that you want to do or?
Well, I do want to do it. I was on the team. I withdrew myself when I got back. I've got a bunch of back issues from the service, and they flared up on me the second week of Bouvet. And since I got back, I found that they're more substantial than what I thought before I went to Bouvet, and I don't want to risk the team, by having a problem and having to shut down early. So for now, I withdrew, but if I am able to get back on the team, there's a slot for me, and I will go get back on the team. But right now, I can't say whether, that I will at this point.
Yeah.
It's I can't risk the project by going, knowing that, my back has the issues that it has.
So if your back was okay and that wasn't an issue, you didn't get burned out to the point where you'd go back to Peter one.
Well, because it's long enough to forget what Bouvet was like.
And your hatred for that country with the boot.
Yeah. Dave, you had
Well,
something?
yeah, speaking of that, about a year ago or so, we had a Zoom with you
Yeah.
when you were in the preparation stage of this.
Mhm.
And I remember you talking about, buying some, cold weather gear
Mhm.
and going on some hikes and trying to
Mhm.
prepare yourself,
Mhm.
as much as possible. So with all of that preparation that you did, what were some of the biggest surprises that you ran into when you actually got there?
It was wet. I was wet like
What?
all the time. I mean, everything was wet. I mean, it was really difficult to dry something once it got wet.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest surprise. I mean, um, I had the gear to stay warm, but I mean, and I had the gear to stay dry, but it was still really hard to stay dry. I mean, it's just the fog and the rain just permeates everything, and that was probably the biggest challenge in terms of personal gear.
And
Wow.
with that, in hindsight, were there some measures or some gear that you could have taken that would have helped mitigate that better? Or was it just like that's how it is?
It's kind of how it is. I wish we all would have found better waterproof gloves,
Mm.
to tell you the truth. Um, but that was probably the most difficult thing. I mean, the rain suit I had is actually from a New Zealand company, and I got it from a place out in Massachusetts that sells to mariners, and that's how I found it. So it's a complete PVC um, overall pants and jacket. So I mean, I was dry. Maybe I would have done something different with my boots. I had like waterproof Swiss designed boots, but after a day they couldn't repel the water. There was that much water. So I switched to my Arctic boots, which are all rubber on the bottom, and then my feet
Mm.
could stay dry that way. But then the other challenge was is my feet would sweat. So at night, I had to try to figure out how to dry my feet off or put on fresh socks or something because it was hard to keep my feet warm at night because they were damp from, being in the boot all day.
Yeah. 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 I used to ice climb. I would
Wow.
run into that.
Yeah.
Put water bottles in my sleeping bag and hot water bottles. And I've got another radio question for you.
Yeah.
Were there, did you operate multi-modes on the same band at times?
Yes.
And
Yes, we
how,
did.
and so the radios just handled it?
So we had low power filters, we had some high power filters. I think the only time we had problems is like on 12 and 17, because even with all the high power, with all the filtering, sharing the same
Yeah.
feed point, even through the diplexer, it was just too much.
Oh.
So there were some
Yeah.
issues on 12 and 17.
Well, I
But
meant what did you operate into, did you operate FT8, CW, and
all at the
sideband
same
all on
time.
the same band?
No, we typically would only have two modes on the same
Okay.
band.
Okay. But even then,
So that was a little dicey, like on 12 and 17, just, because of that. But like
Yeah.
40, we didn't really have any problems, for example.
wow.
And I think the other bands, we really didn't have the capability to do that.
I mean,
Um,
those filters aren't that sharp. I mean,
no, they're not.
so the radios must just handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the 7610 is no different than any other SDR that's out there today. I wouldn't say it's exceptional. Um, you know, but it was a decent enough radio. I mean, for me, the biggest challenge on the 7610s was their menu structure.
Mm.
Because I'm an Elecraft person, so it was completely foreign to me.
Hmm.
And the fact that they're still using passband tuning that, they developed 30, 40 years ago and they haven't changed. I particularly didn't like that. I'm used to, narrowing up my filters linearly. without shifting the IF around and dicking around like that. So that was, for me, that was just a nuisance for me personally. And I didn't like the spectral display at all.
Yeah.
Steve, you're
Well,
muted, but yeah, go
when
ahead.
you're running,
Sorry.
when you're running, the spectral display doesn't do a lot for you.
Can
It
you hear
helps
me
you
now?
kind of see where people are with the pileup. Yeah, I can hear you now.
I don't know how that happened. You guys originally planned on using 2 different locations on the island,
Yeah.
and probably to get a little isolation between stations, or because
No.
where you ended up had a great takeoff to all directions.
Right. I
So
mean, I mean, there were really 2 compelling reasons. One was we couldn't go to the lower station because it was full of SEALs.
sure.
And 2, the team was a lot smaller than we originally had planned.
I
Oh,
see.
yeah.
So it worked out just as well to be at the higher station with all of us.
Yeah.
It worked out fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually probably worked out better, to tell you the truth.
Well, yeah, because you were more compact there.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
It was a great location to be. I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
Sounds like this
Well,
would be
good.
a full expedition unless you had a helicopter. You can't do it unless you had a helicopter.
You have to have a helicopter. Exactly. There's no way to land with a boat now. And even then, it's very
Yeah.
difficult to do, as you guys saw in the 23 trip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow.
It was a
Oh,
great
this is
presentation.
excellent.
Really, and
Yeah,
your
we
videos
thank
weren't
you.
choppy or
Very good.
anything.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions or
but-
comments,
but-
you guys?
but-
Thank you. I mean,
No.
no?
Why?
You're a
That
hero.
was good.
Yeah.
On